their proclamation, and this is the young lady that's a tribal member that serves in the Minnesota State House of Representatives, and we're very proud of you.
My name is Susan Allen. I'm here with Representative Karen Clark, and you know, there's a lot of compelling reasons why I decided to run for elected office for the Minnesota House, but I can tell you here that I could not pass up the opportunity, how ironic it would be to be elected as the first Dakota woman in this 150th year. So. First, I'm here as an elected official from the Minnesota House with Representative Erdahl and Representative Clark to welcome the Dakota back to Minnesota. And also, it's of personal significance. My grandmother was Dakota, so it is an honor to be here on this day, in this sacred place where we honor our relatives. And also to celebrate who we are. We come from a very strong and powerful people. And today we have a resolution. Representative Clark will say a few words, and then we're going to read it. So if you'll be patient with us here.
All my relations, I'm happy to be with you today. And I was talking with my sister here a little earlier, just saying I've had the whole range of emotions today, of sadness and grief, and also celebration. And so I hope that the resolution that we put together here really expresses all that. It comes from our heart.
A House resolution acknowledging the survival legacy of the Dakota people and welcoming them back to the state of Minnesota. Whereas by 1862, the Dakota people of Minnesota had been confined to a small strip of land along the Minnesota River and had endured years of treaty violations by the United States government, along with insults, corruption, cruelty, and hunger at the hands of unscrupulous traders and government agents.
And whereas the loss of land, deceptive business practices, starvation, and general suffering led to unrest that culminated in the U.S.-Dakota conflict of 1862. And
whereas many atrocities were committed by both sides during the war, however, the military tribunal courts that were formed at the end of the conflict were a travesty of justice, and many trials lasting less than 5 minutes without explanation or legal representation given to the Dakota who were accused, often falsely.
And whereas Governor Alexander Ramsey, who had already declared his wishes that the Dakota people be, quote, exterminated or driven forever beyond the borders of the state, end quote, urged that all 303 Dakota men who were accused be executed. And
whereas on December 26, 1862, by the order of President Abraham Lincoln, in compromise with the state, 38 of the 303 were executed by hanging in Mankato, Minnesota. It remains the largest mass execution in American history.
And whereas the remaining prisoners were held captive for almost 4 years, and by the time of their release, 1/3 of them had died from disease. And
whereas in the aftermath of the war, more than 1,600 Dakota women, children, and elderly men were held in an internment camp on Pike Island near Fort Snelling, where as many as 300, mostly children, died from malnutrition and disease. In April 1863, Congress declared that all treaties with the Dakota null and void and undertook to expel the Dakota people completely from Minnesota.
And whereas in May 1863, Dakota survivors were forcibly relocated to the drought-stricken Crow Creek Reservation in southeastern South Dakota Territory, where 300 people died the first winter. And
whereas a state bounty was placed on the scalps of the Dakota people and punitive expeditions were sent out to hunt down those who remained within the boundaries of the state.
And whereas in 2012, Minnesota is a thriving, forward-looking state, but it remains haunted by one of the darkest chapters from its past, the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862. And
whereas while the Dakota people have survived colonization, war, removal, termination, and countless struggles, and continue to endure the consequences, they have not lost their culture and they have not forgotten their original homeland.
And whereas in observance of the 150th anniversary of the U.S.-Dakota War of 1862, a welcome home of Dakota exiles walk and relay from Flanders, South Dakota to Pipestone National Monument right here is being held along with ceremonies and a feast which all Minnesotans are welcome to attend on Friday, August 17, 2012. And a ceremony of healing will be held by Dakota elders on Sunday, August 19, 2012 at the historic Nest Church near Litchfield, Minnesota. Now, therefore,
Be it resolved by the Committee on Rules and Legislative Administration of the House of Representatives of the State of Minnesota that it deeply regrets the forced removal of the Dakota people and welcomes back all Dakota people to Minnesota, their original homeland.
And I just want to tell you, this is signed by Kurt Zellers, the Speaker of the Minnesota House of Representatives, by Matt Dean, the Chair of Rules and Legislative Administration, by myself, Karen Clark, State Representative, by Paul Thiessen, the Minority Leader in the Minnesota House of Representatives, by Susan Allen, our State Representative here, and by Dean Erdahl, our State Representative, who you heard from earlier. Thank you so much.
We thank you so very, very much.